Feeling the chilled vibe of summer and tasting the crisp, cold enjoyment of Carlsberg? Probably. Carlsberg. Probably the best beer in the world. Always drink responsibly. Get the facts. Be drink aware. Visit drinkaware.ie.
Moncrief
with Energlaze
on News Talk.
Now, when you travel by air, the actual travel is the least time-consuming part. We've all got used to the passport and security checks. But in Singapore Airport, there are plans to do away with all that. All you need is your face. The travel journalist Owen Corrie joins us to explain what's going to happen. Owen, good afternoon to you.
Yay, Sean, happy Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday to you too. Are these changes already in place, or when are they thought to come into place?
The aviation industry and the airports are all gung-ho for it. The real problem is the drag on the customs border control side. Government agencies less enthusiastic. But when you think, Sean, of the huge innovations in technology that we're all holding in our hands that I'm speaking to you on now, when you look at what is possible, the technology that's possible through airports, facial recognition, there is technology there that would mean that you wouldn't even need to produce a boarding pass, a passport. You won't even need to get to the top of the queue. You'll be identified in the queue and all the details will be processed and you just walk through the gate. The real issue here is the block, as I say. The government agencies less enthusiastic about that than the airlines and the airports are.
Okay, so but presumably if this all comes to pass, at some point you walk into the airport, you have to prove who you are.
Well, it should be. You can prove who you are as soon as you step in. That's the level of technology that's available. There has been real progress, and even in the last 2 years, even in the run up to the COVID and the post pandemic, getting through airports has become so much easier. Some of the nightmare airports I used to have terrible trouble with are got a lot easier. One of the big innovations is the fact that you automatically get into Australia now, because you're coming off a long flight when you land in one of the airports there, Perth or Brisbane or Adelaide or Sydney, and you go to your gate, and because you're from Ireland and you've got your everything done online, you just slip the passport in. It looks at you to make sure that you are who you are, and occasionally, randomly, people are picked for a second check. They do that to make sure the system is working, but you walk through the gates instead of the big long queue we used to have at the end of a 21-hour flight. And the same thing is right through Europe. E-gates have made life so much easier. It's a joy to arrive in Faro Airport in Portugal and get through the queue so quickly. And we're not ones to mock, but you look over to the neighbouring queue from the British people trying to get in since Brexit, and they're all waiting there looking grumpy.
Yeah, I think you can't use that though if you have a child with you.
Well, now you're complicating
the
the
issue. Stick in with all the Brits and all the other has-beens.
People, terrorists, drug dealers, international people traffickers, and people with children. They all fall into the same category, really.
But would the idea be that you would arrive at Singapore Airport and then you do that, you do that passport scan there, and then from that point on, the kind of system in the airport knows you have a boarding pass and kind of lets you glide through unimpeded?
Absolutely. And they can tell exactly where you are at whatever time. Now, the thing with countries like Shanghai and China is there's a lot of paperwork online in advance. Usually there's a visa required, a virtual visa, and thankfully we've got one of the most powerful passports in the world. There's only a couple of countries we still need paper visas for. There's a lot, so obviously America being a very good example, where you have to have your ESTA in advance, your ESTA. But once you have that sort of online done in advance, they have something to identify you by. When you arrive, it's less troublesome. And sometimes the more strict or repressive is probably the wrong word, the regime, the greater the paperwork in advance, the easier it is when you get there. China doesn't have any people complaining about human rights and data protection and GDPR. So when they get you there, they're pretty certain that they can keep an eye on you. And if you're not doing what you're supposed to, they'll be able to find you fairly quickly. So it's easy to move around. The facial recognition, the recognition off your phone, the barcodes, the QR codes off your phone, all of those work pretty seamlessly in some of the countries that up to 3 decades ago would have been regarded as an awful lot of paperwork countries.
Yeah, no, but you did mention, I suppose, national governments or security agencies might be somewhat resistant to these kind of changes coming through, but do you feel they're kind of inevitable anyway?
Well, it depends on the strength of the agencies. I mean, oddly enough, Britain has big long queues in Heathrow, and they're all this sort of thing. We're keeping the country safe and we're keeping the undesirables out by making them queue or making them stand. And America does suffer a little bit from that as well. 3-hour queues in Miami. Anybody who has decided to save €40 by flying through Heathrow instead of flying directly from Dublin or Shannon and going through the US pre-clearance, sometimes when you land on the other side, it can be troublesome. I don't think government agencies are notoriously suspicious of technology, and they always think that they are making people safer by making them miserable when they land. It's a little bit like the dog ate my homework when you arrive at school. You know, the safety. Why are you doing this to people? Safety and security. And then everyone nods sagely and says, well, that's the reason.
Yeah. Owen, thanks a million for talking with us today.
That was a great pleasure, Sean.
Thanks, Owen. That was travel journalist there, Owen Corry. Now,
Moncrief, weekdays at 2 p.m.
with Energlaze
on News Talk.
Feeling the chilled vibe of summer and tasting the crisp, cold enjoyment of Carlsberg? Probably. Carlsberg. Probably the best beer in the world. Always drink responsibly. Get the facts. Be drink aware. Visit drinkaware.ie.